Zayn Dantata was waiting to see if she would actually peek in. The moment Teniola opened the door to check on him, he snatched her wrist with a sudden deep laugh that echoed against the bathroom tiles. He pulled her straight under the shower spray. Teniola shrieked, struggling to break free, but Zayn held her firm until the cold water drenched her completely. Zayn, you are such a jerk, Teniola cursed, though she couldn't stop the laughter bubbling up. Zayn was already dry, a towel wrapped around his muscular waist, watching his handiwork with a smirk. Take a proper bath, Jare. After all, you just left the hospital, Zayn teased, turning to walk out. Who asked for your help? Teniola shouted, spitting water out of her mouth and wiping her eyes. She watched his retreating back. The iconic king of the Dantatas was back in his element.
Zayn stepped into the bedroom, drying his hair and applying a rich cocoa butter cream to his skin. By the time Teniola was done, she realized she hadn't brought a towel. She peeped through the door. "Zayn, I beg, pass me a towel," she demanded. He handed one over and she emerged with it tied over her chest, her hair dripping. "Zayn, your parents are waiting downstairs. Please, go and join them. Just hear them out before you make your final move," she coaxed. Zayn stood before the full-length mirror, inspecting his wound. It was healing, shrinking into a thin line, but he hated the thought of his scar. In his world, a Dantata was supposed to be flawless. He'd get the best ointment or fly to Dubai for laser removal if he had to.
Teniola watched him. She was momentarily stunned by his physique. The broad chest, the narrow waist, and the sharp abdominal muscles defined under his white waistband. She swallowed hard, quickly looking away to hide her admiration. "Zayn, please," she started again. Zayn turned sharply, his eyes flashing. "Teniola, I am not a child whose willpower you can just bend. I am not going downstairs to meet anyone," he snapped. A soft knock interrupted them. The door opened slowly and Carol Dantata stepped in. She stopped in her tracks, seeing her son half-dressed and Teniola in nothing but a towel. "Mom, I value my privacy. You can't just walk into my room when you know I'm not alone." Zayn spoke rashly, his Nigerian upbringing momentarily clashing with his irritation.
Teniola felt her face heat up. The scene definitely looked compromised to any African mother. "Sorry, Zayn, but the Sanusis are here," Carol pleaded, her voice soft and heavy with maternal weight. "I had to come and beg you to let things be. Come downstairs and face them." "It's nice they are here," Zayn replied coldly, turning his back to her to grab a fresh shirt. "But tell Dad I will do what I want. I don't like being treated like a small boy who doesn't know his left from his right." "Zayn, listen," Carol explained, stepping closer. "The Sanusi family is already in a downward spiral because of what they did. Your father was wise. He made sure this favor is explicitly for you. They have already lost half of their company to the Dantata Group as compensation. You don't even have to settle Hadiza for the broken engagement anymore." Teniola, now in a short armless gown, caught the shift in the air. Half their company? That was a massive win. She winked at Carol, signaling her to leave the rest to her. Once Carol left, Teniola walked up to Zayn, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her head on his broad back. "Teniola, let me wear my belt," Zayn grumbled, knowing what was coming. "Appear to be fine before the Sanusis," she whispered. "I am begging you, my love, for my sake and for Taiwo and Kehinde. Let it be the way Alhaji wants it for now." Zayn froze. He turned to face her, his voice thundering. "Don't do that! Don't use you and the kids to beg me. If I had died, or if Zubi had died, what would the Dantata Group do to bring us back? That miscreant should feel my wrath." "Fine," Teniola suggested, her eyes bright with intelligence. "Revenge later. Make them think it's forgotten. Set a trap. Let them fall into it, and then vent your full wrath when they least expect it." Zayn stared at her. A slow, predatory smile crossed his lips. She was smart. He hadn't thought of playing the long game quite like that. He pulled her back before she could leave and kissed her furiously. The kiss of a man who had found his match in both love and war. "Let's go downstairs," she gasped, pulling away. "Yeah, sure," Zayn replied. As they descended the grand staircase of the Dantata mansion, the Sanusi family looked up. They saw Zayn looking every bit the powerful heir, with Teniola following closely. They knew instantly. This was the woman who had displaced Hadiza. But with their son facing jail and their company halved, they had to swallow their pride to save what was left of their name. Meanwhile, it had been days since Segun and Teniola Ademole had spoken. That afternoon, Tiwa invited him for lunch. When he tried to decline, she was firm. "I will wait there until dinner if I have to." Segun, feeling a twinge of guilt, actually showed up. They sat in a tense, silent luxury restaurant. Tiwa watched him, hoping the ghost of Teniola wouldn't haunt their meal. "Is there anything you want to discuss?" Segun asked once the plates were cleared. Tiwa nodded, her heart racing. "I want to talk about us. Please, just a few minutes of your time. I'll be brief." Segun listened to Tiwa in silence. She paused, looking at his face to see if he would hiss or tell her to shut up, but Segun did neither. Her heart skipped with excitement. He was actually listening. Perhaps her marriage and her happiness were about to be restored. "This is not how we started, Segun," Tiwa pleaded, her voice trembling. "We loved each other. We were best friends, original gist partners. We enjoyed each other's company. What happened to us? Where did I go wrong? Tell me my sin so I can apologize and never trespass again." She leaned forward, her eyes searching his. "I love you, Segun. Why do you suddenly look at me with such disgust? Have you ever seen me misbehave? Is it because of my sister Teniola? Please don't do this to me. I have never been with another man but you, even if I know we started on the wrong foot back then."
"Teniola is not your wife anymore," Tiwa continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Please, don't cheat on me with her. That will be a pain I cannot bear. Let's mend our broken walls. I accept. No more surrogacy. We can adopt 1 or 2 kids and raise them as our own children. We can do it, Segun. I know we can." Tiwa broke down into heavy sobs. Segun looked at her and felt a wave of pity. He couldn't quite explain when the conflict in their house started or how they had become like strangers living under the same roof. He reached into his pocket and offered her his handkerchief. Tiwa was shocked. Was she dreaming? She took the cloth but didn't wipe her eyes. Instead, she held it to her chest, inhaling his expensive cologne. "We'll talk at home later," Segun said, his voice softening. "Go back home now. I'll be back early today." He walked her to her car, and for the first time in months, his countenance wasn't made of stone. Tiwa drove off feeling like she was floating on a cloud. The discovery at the kindergarten. Instead of going straight to the mansion, Tiwa felt a sudden urge to visit the high-end kindergarten where she had once spotted Teniola with those 2 boys. She went inside and asked for the principal. "Is Miss Teniola Ademole still coming here?" Tiwa asked. The principal adjusted her glasses. "No, Miss Teniola no longer comes here. Her children have probably been moved to a different school." Tiwa's eyes widened. "Her children? Those 2 boys I saw, were they hers? When did she have kids? Are you sure they aren't adopted?" The principal shook her head. "Taiwo and Kehinde are Miss Teniola's biological children. They are her pride and joy." "But wait, may I ask why you don't know this? Aren't you her sister?" Tiwa swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. We were estranged for a few years. After our father, Chief Ademole, passed away, things were difficult. She left the family house and kept us in the dark about her life." The principal looked at her with pity and sighed. "This is definitely a family tussle," she said, shaking Tiwa's hand as a sign that the meeting was over. Tiwa returned to her car, shivering. Taiwo and Kendi. How could Teniola have hidden a twin pregnancy? Where did she go? Who was the father? A dark thought crossed her mind. Was she pregnant after that night? The night of the incident?
I need to find that man, Tiwa muttered, referring to the thug they had hired years ago to ruin Teniola. I need to know if he used a condom or if he left her with those kids. She tried calling the old number she had saved under a fake name, but a robotic voice informed her, "The number you are calling does not exist." "Stupid man!" she yelled, hitting her steering wheel. She immediately called her mother, Molly Ademole. "Mommy, you won't believe it. Teniola has twins, biological twins. They must be about 4 years old." Molly Mo was silent on the other end, then hissed. "So the girl was busy bathing bastards while we thought she was suffering. Don't worry, Tiwa. This is enough information to finish her career at the Dantata Group. A single mother with a shady past. The board will never accept her." But as Tiwa drove home, one question kept her heart racing. Could the kids belong to him? She shook her head. No. 4 years ago, he said Teniola's very name. There was no way.
Tiwa Ademole arrived at the mansion and threw herself onto the bed, her mind spinning with thoughts of Teniola. For the first time, a sliver of genuine remorse pierced her conscience. She thought about how they had essentially stripped Teniola naked and left her in the cold. They had set her up. Meanwhile, at Zayn's house, after the Sanusis left, Zayn asked to see the boys. When Taiwo and Kehinde saw Zayn, they screamed with joy, their little feet thundering across the marble floor to hug him. Zayn smiled, his heart melting. But before he could pull them close, Zubi scooped them up, hugging them warmly. Zayn's hands were left suspended in the air. Zubi had always loved those boys, often wishing they were his own. Eventually, the twins struggled free and ran to their father. Zayn was about to lift them onto his thighs when Carol Dantata interjected. "Zayn, I beg, take it easy. Your wounds aren't fully healed. Don't put pressure on your chest." Zayn looked at the boy's hair. It was getting bushy. "I'll call my barber to come to the house tomorrow," he decided. "All 3 of us need a fresh haircut." The twins then ran to their grandparents, their cheerful Naija energy lighting up the room. They had grown so much since Zayn first saw them, looking more like Dantatas every single day. Soon, the elders and Zubi left so Zayn could rest. But Zayn had no intention of sleeping. His mind was already back on business. Teniola, knowing he needed deep rest for his stitches to knit, saw no other choice. She discreetly added a mild sedative to his juice. 10 minutes after drinking it, Zayn's eyelids became heavy. "Why am I feeling like this in broad daylight?" he muttered, his voice thick. He looked at Teniola, realizing something wasn't right, but his tongue felt like lead. "Let me help you, my love," Teniola whispered, supporting him as they walked to the bedroom. The moment his head hit the pillow, he was out. Teniola exhaled a long sigh of relief. Teniola felt the weight of her recent isolation. She realized she hadn't spoken to Dr. Lanre or Ruza in weeks. They had been her only real family when the world turned its back on her. She dialed Ruza first. Ruza picked up quickly but stayed silent. "Rosa, Biko, talk to me," Teniola pleaded. Ruza finally softened, her voice warm again. They talked, and Teniola mentioned she needed to see both her and Landry. Rosa explained that Landry was on call at the hospital but would be free the next day. Next, she called Landry. "Teniola, I've missed you all," were his first words. Teniola's voice broke. She started sobbing quietly. "I'm so sorry, Landry. I was wrong to treat you the way I did." "Forget that one," Landry replied dismissively. "That is in the past." They agreed to meet for dinner the next day. Hanging up, Teniola felt a massive weight lift. Her friends had forgiven her, and they would be so happy to know she was finally building a real life with the father of her children.
A few hours later, as dinner was being served, Teniola saw Zayn coming down the stairs. He looked sharp, but his eyes were like flint. "What did you put in my drink?" he asked coldly as he reached the bottom step. Teniola didn't flinch. She walked up and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. "I added a sedative so you would actually sleep and heal." "Don't ever do that again," Zayn declared, though he didn't pull away. "Next time you put something in my food without my consent, I will call it poisoning. Understood?" "Understood," she whispered.
They sat for dinner. Midway through the jollof rice, Teniola mentioned, "I won't be back early tomorrow. I'm having dinner with my friends." Zayn paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. "An appointment? With who?" "Lanre and Rosa," she replied. She began to tell him the story, how Rosa saved her after the divorce and how Lanre had been her savior when she found out she was pregnant. How he helped her get to London to be with his mother so the world wouldn't shame her. As she spoke, her eyes grew moist. Zayn watched her, his expression shifting from coldness to a deep protective intensity. He reached over and offered her a tissue. "I am coming with you," Zayn declared firmly. "I want to meet these people who took care of my woman when I wasn't there." When Teniola heard Zayn Dantata said he would accompany her to the dinner with her friends, her belly sweat. She felt a rush of joy. Her eyes became teary. She had tried to stay strong while narrating her past suffering to Zayn, but his simple act of solidarity broke the dam. She let the tears pour down her cheeks freely. Zayn reached out and squeezed her hand firmly. He knew her emotions were overflowing as the traumatic memories of the past 4 years crashed over her. He passed her a tissue, watching her with deep admiration. He imagined her as a young woman with no family support, no job, and a pregnancy resulting from a night she couldn't even remember. She had been courageous enough to keep the babies. What if she had chosen an abortion, Zayn thought? There would be no Taiwo or Kehinde today. He wouldn't have this pride in his chest. He vowed that the past would remain only for narration. He would shower her with so much love that she would become the envy of every woman in Lagos and beyond. "I am sorry for the pain you went through because of my kids," Zayn promised solemnly. "I will make it up to you, Teniola. I swear it." At Segun and Tiwa mansion, Segun returned home early as promised. He was surprised not to find Tiwa waiting at the door, but he found her sleeping in the bedroom. When she woke and saw him, she offered a small, hopeful smile. After a sumptuous dinner, where Segun discussed his new business investments and processing plans, he suggested a walk in the garden. Tiwa was glowing. She hadn't seen this old Segun, the charming, attentive one, in years. "Tiwa, everything you said today sank deep," Segun began as they walked. "I was bitter after the failed IVF, but I want to try again. I want us to live like we used to." He paused, looking at the stars. "But I have a heavy conscience. In 4 years, I only saw Teniola once at a restaurant. She humiliated me publicly and I deserved it. I want to apologize for my part in her downfall. I feel we are suffering from karma. If Teniola forgives us, maybe our lives will finally move forward. Don't accuse me of sleeping with her again. If I seek her out, it is for her forgiveness, not her bed." Tiwa felt a pang of guilt. She realized she had been the foolish one, accusing Teniola of being a husband snatcher, when Teniola didn't even want to look at Segun. She decided to drop the bombshell. "Segun, Teniola has 2 kids," Tiwa blurted out. "What?" Segun stopped dead in his tracks, letting go of her hand. "Teniola has given birth? When? How?" Tiwa explained her visit to the kindergarten and her conversation with the principal. "The principal told me they are her biological sons, twins to be precise. They look to be about 3 or 4 years old." A long, suffocating silence followed. Segun felt like he had been stabbed. I hope it wasn't the incident of that night that resulted in those kids," he asked, his voice cracking. "I'm afraid it might be," Tiwa replied. Segun was transfixed. They hadn't just ruined her marriage, they had forced her into motherhood under the most traumatic circumstances possible. When they returned to the house, Segun couldn't find words. Tiwa, we must find her and beg, Segun declared. I greatly regret what we did. Tiwa sighed audibly but didn't truly agree. She had lied to Segun. She had no intention of begging Teniola. Her mother, Molly, would kill her if she did. She had only told Segun she wanted to apologize to keep him close.
In reality, she wanted to find out what Teniola wanted in exchange for vanishing forever. That night, Segun went to sleep with a heart heavy with the ghost of Teniola. Meanwhile, in the Dantata mansion, Zayn was kissing Teniola passionately. Zayn, be careful of your wounds, Teniola whispered, breathless. But Zayn wasn't listening. He was feeling a fire within him that no bandage could suppress.